Witchcraft is something that's becoming more common, but mostly known as Wiccan. Witchcraft goes back hundreds, thousands of years. Every culture has their own version. The following stories are all instances of creepy experiences that involve witchcraft. Hope you enjoy, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the terror. Number 1. Whoa, I'm so glad this bullshit is over with. These have been by far some of the worst months of my life. This includes a summer when I was 14 and I got mono. I was laid up for a month and I felt like absolute garbage, but at least people didn't die. Let me start over and say that this all started because someone threw up a frog at lunch. It was a pretty nice day out, sun was shining, teachers weren't going crazy with the homework load yet. We were all in high spirits. I was making a quite impressive statue of mashed potatoes on my tray when Simone began choking. Simone wasn't eating that day, which adds up to the whackness of that. She wasn't feeling too good after gym and was having a juice box instead. But suddenly she started gagging and grabbing at her throat, leaning over the table. Mabel patted her back and asked if she was okay, jokingly asked if there were bones in the juice. I think I could hear Simone gasp out, "There's something in my throat," before she yacked her guts all over the table. Gross, I know. What appeared to be mostly digested strawberries and cream oatmeal and granola splattered all over the table, filling up poor Andrew's tray till it overflowed and almost spilled into his lap. Something brown and green flopped in the middle of all of it. For a few moments it was still. Then it twitched and got up to its four legs, croaked loudly before hopping onto Mabel's lap. We were all too stunned to react until that frog moved. Mabel screamed and threw it across the room, where it made a horrifying squelching sound as it smashed into the lunchroom wall. That poor frog. First it had to be vomited up, and then met a frightening, if not quick, death by brick wall. Of course, the whole cafeteria exploded into complete craziness after that. It's not every day that someone catapults a frog through the air. Then the gym teacher had to be called in to calm everyone down. Coach Drake has one of these big, booming voices that can get the attention of a whole room with no effort. Everyone got their shit together while Mabel and Simone got marched to the principal's office. Thankfully, neither of them got punished, although the principal didn't believe that Simone actually threw up a frog. It's pretty unbelievable when you say it out loud like that. But point is, Simone wasn't pulling any funny business. The school went crazy with the news that she'd somehow puked a live frog. Our school has a newspaper run by the journalism club. Kathy Prince is the president. And I gotta give it to her, she's passionate about the role. It's not really my thing. I've been in the gymnastics team since my freshman year, so I don't do the clubs. But I can appreciate the passion. Kathy ran nuts with the story, claiming that someone had put a curse on Simone because she beat him out on the spot for the gymnastics team, which is ridiculous. But you have to understand, my school is really boring. We live in the middle of nowhere and our school team is called the Beavers. This was big news. But the big news goes, and then it dies out, especially when there's bigger news at stake. Someone kidnapped Kathy's baby sister. Aubrey was the cutest little thing. Kathy's mom, Maggie, was bragging about how Aubrey just won second place for the cutest baby for this online contest, and she was going to appear in a magazine any day now. The poor thing just vanished out of her crib one night. Yeah, that was crazy. People just don't steal babies around here. Someone did steal a toddler about 10 years ago, but all I cared about back then were crayons and purple dinosaurs. Sure, I knew about stranger danger, but if it didn't directly affect snack time, I didn't care. Sorry, off track. People say I have a mind like a squirrel. Maggie had a legit meltdown, offering thousands of dollars in rewards for any information about Aubrey's safe return. But there was really nothing to be gained. Aubrey was gone. There were no clues, no ransom notes. It was all pointless. But this, I think it sent Kathy off the deep end because she swore up and down that witches were to blame. I could understand if Kathy was 12. Tweens have the nuttiest ideas. But she's 16. Losing your little sister can really screw you up. But that was a little far-fetched. But her journalism club ran with it, and they started the witch hunt, and people started dying. Winter Roth's real name was Amy. I think she just wanted to be unique. She was a weird kid, that was for sure. She tried to be goth, wearing these enormous boots and really cheap black lipstick, but she ended up kind of looking silly. She went through some really weird phases. I'd known her since she was in the 6th grade. Back then, she was obsessed with anime, so she'd speak in broken Japanese and had a really unsettling crush on one of the Asian boys in our class. Poor Michael. We laugh about it now, but I swear he looked pain whenever he saw Winter. Last year, Winter claimed to be catkin and would randomly meow and hiss at people in the halls while wearing fake cat ears. Oh, thank God she grew out of that this year. But even though she was weird and kind of obnoxious, I don't think she deserved to die. She was found at the bottom of a cliff at a nearby park by a few dog walkers. Her head had done a 180 on her neck, and she was apparently beat up so bad that her parents couldn't positively identify her at first. Someone had taken a lot of rage out on poor Winter. I went to her funeral, and so did Michael. We told her mom that we were sorry she was gone and that we'd miss her, and strangely enough, I kind of do. It's weird not digging through my locker and hearing Winter hum off tune as she got her books. Sue me, I'm weird like that. The second victim was a guy, Eddie Smith. Eddie was probably one of Winter's only real close friends, and that was definitely because he was just as weird. He was actually 19 and had been held back a year, and he wasn't too bright, but he was nice. He helped me to find a computer class on my first day and then wrote me a creepy poem about how my whimsical appearance and dark, soulful eyes called to him. He stopped with that creepiness when he latched onto Winter, his goddess apparently. He never had the guts to actually ask her out, but he'd be caught staring at her at awkward times. He was the most crushed by her death. He stopped coming to school and his Facebook page had gone full emo. I messaged him because I genuinely thought he was going to kill himself, and apparently someone else did too. He was found hanging outside of his house, but suicide was ruled out real fast after the autopsy. Again, same beating, except there was evidence someone had attempted to drown him as well. Or, well, I can't call it an attempt because it succeeded. I'd only been to one funeral before this, and it was my aunt's. Now, in 1 year, I've been to two. I know what you're thinking. How do I know all these details? Well, Kathy's newspaper kept up with everything. I swear I lost my cool when she printed notes from Eddie's journal about how he loved Winter and how he hoped one day she'd notice someone as pitiful as him. Listen, there's a line, and you cross it when you're printing a dead kid's diary for a bunch of stupid teenagers to read. But I noticed that she, despite keeping up with every other little detail, she kept referring to Eddie's death as a suicide, despite everyone else saying otherwise. I know I should have gotten an adult, but I figured if I grabbed Simone and Michael, I'd be cool when I went to go investigate at Kathy's house. It was dark, obviously. It was past midnight, and no one would be awake on a school night. Michael was humming the Mission Impossible theme as we crept around her house to the backyard, which was shielded by a suburban white picket fence. Michael picked me up so I could peer over, and I swear to God I nearly shit myself. I wouldn't admit that lightly either. It was a Kathy and a few of her friends, and between them was a girl tied on the ground, having a total blubbering meltdown. I recognized her almost immediately. Teresa. Teresa was different. She never made eye contact, she hated being touched, and she was obsessed with dinosaurs. I just casually mentioned that I liked the long-necked dinos sewn carefully onto her backpack, and she launched into a 30-minute lecture about what species it was, how long ago it lived, and all these other random facts. It was a brontosaurus, her favorite. Right now, Teresa was freaking terrified. I couldn't even understand what she was saying. It was pure nonsense. Kathy stood in front of her, cradling a red gas can in her arms. "This is your last chance, in front of God. Confess your sins and tell me where my sister is," she snapped at her. My blood ran cold as she splashed Teresa with gasoline. One of her friends had a matchbox ready to strike. Teresa's bottom lip quivered before she bawled. Kathy slapped her, tying a bandana around her mouth to silence her. "If the witch won't confess, that means the devil's really got claws in her," she said through gritted teeth, snatching the matchbox from the other friend's hand. "We're not actually going to burn her, right? We can't make that look like a suicide," a friend said, suddenly looking freaked out. Kathy punched her so fast that I blinked and I missed it. "We're surrounded by them, witches. She's one of them. If she doesn't confess, she's a witch. I know it." She screeched like a banshee striking the match. I launched myself over the fence and tackled Kathy to the ground. I've been in gymnastics since I was old enough to walk, and can support someone standing on my shoulders. I'm not exactly a wimp. I don't remember what I was screaming at Kathy, only that I was beating her face in and hollering loud enough to wake the dead. The thing is, in this close-knit neighborhood, neighbors hear everything, especially on a night this quiet. I remember lights flashing on in houses down the street. I remember Michael trying to tear me off of Kathy. I remember Kathy begging for mercy. I wasn't in control of myself until an adult actually managed to rip me off of Kathy's unconscious body. Don't worry, the story has a happy ending. Kathy didn't die, but she did confess to killing Winter and Eddie, all because witches. Poor Teresa confessed that Kathy lured her there with the promise of a sleepover, and Teresa has a rough enough time fitting in. I'm inviting her into my friends group if she wants in. She might not be a gymnast, but she's a sweet girl. Kathy's friends are going down too, along with, plot twist, Kathy's mom. Maggie was in on it, and she was the one who hauled Eddie's body to make it look like he hung himself. We're gonna have a nice memorial for Winter and Eddie. Maybe in whatever weirdo afterlife there is for them, they can be together. The best part is, I'm getting the fuck out of Dodge with the rest of my coven. Listen, if there's already a witch burning going on, the rest of us have to go. They missed us, sure, but how lucky are they gonna get the next time? It's pure luck that Simone was the one to cough up the frog. We're all betting Andrew's the only one who threw that hex out there. With her being a frog barfer and the rest of us fitting the norm, we weren't suspected. No, witch burners go after the outcast first, they always do. But we can't rely on that saving us every time. My mom knows better, after she lost her sister. I'm inviting along Teresa so she can come or go. I feel that after all the bullshit that's happened to her, I think she'll love to tag along and start over again. Not to mention, Mom's letting me pick Aubrey's new name. She can finally be out and about as my baby sister. Should I just respell it as Aubrey or pick something in memorial of the fallen, like Edith or Amy? Number 2. I live in a small town in Arizona, about 2 hours from Albuquerque. If you were to drive about 10 minutes toward New Mexico, there's a small dirt road you can take. As a backstory, it was a highway back in the day. Apparently there was a teenage girl around 17, but her boyfriend driving down the highway had gotten into a verbal fight. The boyfriend had gotten very upset and crashed into a tree. The girl, whose name was Sally, had died, while the boyfriend had walked away perfectly fine. There's also a cult that would rape and kill girls in a pentagram as a sacrifice to the devil. As a result, this area is very big in paranormal activity. A friend of mine has gone to the tree to hang out and chill, which is just code for getting stoned. But as he tried to leave, he couldn't. He turned and saw a large dark figure holding up the back end of his truck, keeping his tires from having traction to leave. Eventually, the figure dropped the back end of his truck, and he left as quickly as possible. This was years ago, and skip forward to a few months ago. Me and several other friends went to the tree to find out if we could find any evidence of this place being haunted. We sat maybe 20 yards away from the tree in a four-door truck. There were only 5 of us in the truck, and just watched. A few things happen. A head pokes out from behind the tree, or dress blows from behind the base of the tree. But soon, an entire figure of a teenage girl walks out from behind the tree. You might think that it could have been a kid messing with us, but there was no way that it was human. Her back was facing the truck, and we all at the same time saw her turn her head, and only a single eye shimmered in the headlights of the truck. We got out of the truck to investigate what we had just seen and found nothing. When we turned around, we saw a very large, slender man, at least 8 feet tall, staring at us. Nobody had the guts to walk towards the truck, but I started towards the vehicle, and as soon as I did, the man disappeared. All 5 of us sprinted to the truck, and when we got there, the driver of the vehicle, his name is Dylan, slammed the gas pedal to the floor, and we got out of there as fast as we could. Both mine and Dylan's girlfriend were there with us and lived very close to each other, so we dropped them off at their houses, and we were on our way back to Dylan's house to calm down. Right after we turned off the road to our girlfriends, Dylan looked at me with a terrified face, so I turned to look at my window, and it's rolling down. I looked at Dylan's left hand to see if he was trying to mess with me, and to my surprise he wasn't. The windows started rolling down by themselves. We both started freaking out and came to a stop at the red light. Every light that was in the vehicle was flickering on and off, and every warning light was on, the check engine light was on, and the truck shut off without the ignition being touched. We both got out of the vehicle and took a moment to calm down. When we got back in and drove to the house, not knowing what to do. Do you have any theories about what this could have been? Please tell us. Number 3. Early on in my 20s, after 2 years of college, I joined a contracting crew and got out of Alabama for a while. They didn't mind a woman joining up, as long as I pulled my weight, but I cut all my hair off for good measure and stopped wearing makeup. Most of the men thought me a lesbian, and I quickly became just one of the guys. Our first and my last job was out in Oklahoma, in a tiny town between Arnett and Sealing. We were supposed to be there a month, but the rain interrupted our work on day 3, and the foreman gave us an early weekend with pay. Can't do much when the dirt becomes mud and the wood swells. The guys wanted to hit the strip club, but I'd seen small town offerings in the past and begged for something else, so we went hunting. Down the road, a cattle trail led to a ghost town that backed up in the woods. According to a couple locals, no one watched the place and we could hunt sans permit. It wasn't a strip club, so I agreed. We got a late start due to two of the guys, the ones with the rifles, spending too much time at the bar and not waking up until 2 in the afternoon. Counting driving time, we didn't hit the ghost town until nearly 4. The guys brought a cooler and too much beer, and another brought his Rottweiler, a gorgeous 110-pound beast itching to tree something. Sure, most of us spent a lot of time drinking, but I stopped there early and the guy with the dog stayed sober, being a responsible, gun-toting Okie. The day passed, and besides a couple pot shots at overweight squirrels, all of which we missed, nothing turned up. It was as the shadows lengthened that the long yards ahead the underbrush shredded. We let the Roddy loose and he thundered off and drive out prey. There was a hint of antler as the dog gave chase. We all saw the deer, all of us, clear as the darkening day, completely sober. The guy with the gun lined up his shot and fired, taking extra care to put his sight clearly on the deer and not his Roddy. I stress again, we all saw that deer. As the gun blast echoed around the trees, the forest fell eerily still. We went to nab our catch, but what we found breaks the number one rule of storytelling. He killed the dog. Now, there's no possible way he could have hit that dog, absolutely none. The antlers were under his sight, yet the poor dog lay bleeding out into the forest floor. There's no trace of the deer, no hoof prints or broken growth. Spooked, we decided to book it out of the trees, but he wouldn't leave the Roddy even when we promised to come back for it at full light. Like something's gonna get him, we take him now. Each guy hefted the dog by a leg, and I took the rifle. The shadows had grown deep enough for us to break out the flashlights. We hoofed it towards the truck, the dog leaving a bloody trail behind us. Halfway out, the trees casting darkness down into strange shapes that made me jumpy, a lady appeared out of nowhere. I raised the rifle without thinking. "Don't shoot her," one of the guys said, and reached over to push the muzzle to the ground. "There's no reason for her to be out here, and after what happened with the dog." "Where you headed, miss?" one of the guys called to the stranger. I stared her down, and she was very pale, with long waves of red hair hanging around her face and shoulders. She looked untamed. "I know my way," she replied, and began to move past us. "It's getting dark," another guy said, and held out his flashlight. "You can have this to help you see." "I know my way," she insisted, and brushed past us. Her voice was silky smooth, and the hairs on my neck raised even more. I started to say something when something hit my ears. The rustling seemed to echo from all directions, but only the underbrush before us moved. Snakes, legions of them, slithered from the growth and over our feet, in an unending tide of long bodies following the strange woman, and all of us remained frozen until the serpents passed, many, many moments later. "Be glad you didn't shoot her," someone muttered, and I agreed. We sped up, double timing it back to our pickups, stashing the dog in the back, and squealing tires out of the ghost town. I swear as we peeled out, eyes followed us from the supposedly empty abandoned house. There's a gas station some miles away, and we stopped to gather our wits and refuel. The cashier inside eyed me before asking what was wrong. "Looks like you've seen the devil." I shrugged, but she insisted on pulling the story from my tongue. Afterwards, she sucked in air, tasting my tail before nodding resolutely. "Nah, we don't go up there. You messed in the witch's territory. Lucky you got out at all." She wouldn't say much else. Urban legends or not, the mountains can stay there. I won't be back. Number 4. This story came about from dealing with a very real witch coven a few years ago. It started around August 2013 throughout October 2013. The events of the story are true to my knowledge and were told to me firsthand by my mother-in-law and other activities I personally witnessed. I hope you enjoy. We live in a small town surrounded by other small towns in the beautiful mountains of Colorado. I moved out here shortly after meeting my husband online and traveled cross country to live with him. Of course, I met his mother as well. She's a dwarf-like hippie broad straight from the 60s who has met everyone from Charles Manson to the original members of the Hells Angel out in California. She's been through so much that nothing really phases her anymore, and she has a wicked Cali attitude if you rub her the wrong way. Well, she lost her house, and my husband decided that the best thing for her would be to move in with us. Joy. She was a very gruff person with me. I'm sure because I'm the new woman in her son's life who is going to take her baby away. Of course, there were some good times too, but mostly I just wanted her out of my house. She was really starting to grate on mine and my husband's nerves when we decided to start looking for a new place for her. Her tastes were pretty specific. She wanted a small, one-room cabin in the mountain town that she could live with her cat. These types of living quarters are not unheard of, but hard to come by, as most are already occupied. A few days passed and we found it, the perfect place, just 15 minutes from where we lived, in a small, no-name town. She would still be close enough to visit on the weekends. She agreed and contacted the landlords and moved in. Within 1 week, she was moved in and loving life. The cabin was really perfect for her, and she began making it her own right away. The walls were painted a bright coral color, and the fireplace was scrubbed clean. She polished the kitchen fixtures and got the weeds out of the yard, then hung all of her beaded curtains and hippie-like tapestries. She finally had a home. Her first night there, we went over for dinner and sat around in the living room afterwards talking like we always do. She was much better now that she was in her own space, and I actually began to like her more. In turn, I think she realized I was there to stay and started liking me more as well. The room was quiet for a minute after the last topic of conversation had ended, and then she turned to us. "There's a history to this place, I found out," she said, daring us to ask her what it was. "Oh, yeah?" my husband added. Then she began, "Yeah, about 10 years ago, a gentleman lived here in the cabin. I don't think it matters, but he was a Hispanic gentleman who lived alone. One day, someone found him floating in the river with his waist tied to a rope, tethered to the shore. He had been dead for several hours. The way he got there or the reason he was there is unknown. He also had marks on his wrists like he had been tied together, and he was pale and very skinny, almost looked malnourished." "Oh, wow. Do they think he committed suicide in the river?" I asked, pressing her for more information. I didn't really think he did, but I needed to know. Of course, the local police called it suicide, but I really sense foul play. Why would you have been in there? He wasn't fishing. They said maybe he went swimming and didn't want to float away, so he tied himself to the shore and got caught in a current only to drown. However, that wouldn't explain the rope marks on his wrist, she explained. "Well, then that's a fucked up story, Mom. Are you sure you feel uncomfortable living here?" my husband asked, obviously concerned. "Oh yeah, honey, I love it here. Nothing will ever make me want to move. But that's not the end of my story," she replied as I inched closer in the edge of my seat. "What else happened?" I asked, more curious. "A few years after the gentleman was found, another tenant was found dead. She was young, wafer-thin gal in her late 20s, I believe. Her body was found hanging from the ceiling fan in my bedroom down the hall. She was still swinging back and forth when they found her. Of course, this was also ruled as a suicide, and this one is more believable." "Mom, have you been in your room? It would be really hard for someone who is any taller than you to have hung themselves from the fan. This cabin is so old and the fan is so rickety. Just the dead weight of her falling or kicking the chair out from underneath would rip the fan off the ceiling. I really don't think it was suicide. Her toes would have probably been able to drag along the ground since the ceiling in this whole place is so low. My head almost touches it," he explained, almost laughing at the thought. "Babe, do you really think that? Do you think someone staged it?" I asked, more excited than I probably should have been. "I mean, I'm no detective, but it really seems fishy to me," he replied. With that statement, we realized the time and decided it was time to go home. We were so excited to be living together, alone, without his mother. The first night was the best. A few weeks later, his mom calls me, and there's something eerie hanging over our conversation. What she told me sent chills down my spine. Hey, honey, I just wanted to call and tell you about something that happened to me last night. I was sleeping on my couch and I felt this strange weight overcome me. The air got thick and I could hardly breathe. I kept my eyes closed because I was afraid of what I'd see if I opened them. Then I felt it. It felt like a hand petting the top of my head and stroking the length of my hair all the way down my back, time and time again. I still kept my eyes closed to pretend I was sleeping, and I was rigid stiff from fear. The sensation continued for a couple minutes and slowly faded away. I still felt the heavy air. It was so thick I could cut it with a knife. It was also still really hard for me to breathe, and I found myself wheezing. I sat up and tried to get my bearings and opened my eyes to take measure of the room. And then I saw it. A dark silhouette in my window that faces out towards the fire pit. It was a large shadow, definitely a man's structure, tall and wide. If it was a woman, she was a large lady. I turned away, hoping it didn't see me, and when I looked back out of the corner of my eye, it was gone. Holy shit, you think this place has some spirits lurking about? What if the guy they found in the river, he lived there too, right? Yeah, he lived here, but I don't feel it was him. It definitely shook me up, but not enough to move. I've had my fair share of meeting the spirits in my day. I hung out with the Manson family in the 60s, so this isn't shit. Okay, well, keep me posted of any other strange going-ons, okay? Oh, I definitely will. Tell my baby I love him. You guys come and see me soon. Love ya. And with that, we hung up. I couldn't believe what she just explained to me. It made me want to stay far away and investigate at the same time. I'm an extremely curious person by nature, and was kind of excited by the things I heard were going on. She seemed fine, so I felt fine, until more strange things started happening. A few more days passed by, and I'd already forgotten about her encounter with the male entity about a week prior. It was a weekend, and I was busy cleaning the house when my phone rang, and it was her. Hey, I had to call you. I think he's here, she said hurriedly into the phone. Wait a second, who's there? I asked, not sure what she was talking about. Did my husband go off early and go to see her? The man, the one from the other night. I think he's here on the property, she explained. Now, the way that the property was set up was actually really nice. There are 5 cabins that bordered the upper edge of the property line, with about 1 or 2 acres of green grass in the middle, along with 2 large garages for storage, I assume. Off to the left is a landlord's house. It's a very unique house, as it's built directly into the side of the mountain that acts as the backbone of the land. There is a distinguishable front door, patio, and greenhouse, but then the rest of the house gets swallowed into the mountain with a beautiful green grass and moss on top of it. It is very reminiscent of the Hobbit Hole. Then across the street from the property is a guardrail and the beautiful Roaring Fork River. Oh, so you're talking about the entity from the other night? I asked, puzzled. Yeah, I think it's him. His height and shape are the same as the silhouette outlined in my window the other night. I have the curtains drawn so he can't see in, but I can see him, and he keeps looking up here at my house, and only my house. He is doing some maintenance and yard work. He keeps going in and out of the garages and making sure to close the door every time when he leaves, even if he's going to go right back inside in a few minutes. I don't know, something doesn't feel right with him. I could hear the unease in her voice now. Unease from a lady who got into a physical altercation with the female Hell's Angel back in the day. Well, do you want to start looking for another I stopped, as I heard her gasp on the other end of the line. What? What is it? Are you okay? I asked, urging her to speak. She answered, whispering into the receiver. He's looking right at me. The words sent chills down my spine. He's standing in the same window from the other night, and staring straight into my soul. She said, even softer still. It was broad daylight. How could this be happening? Is he doing anything else, or just staring at you? Are your doors locked? I asked. The doors are locked, but he isn't moving, just staring, wide-eyed and expressionless. I wonder what he wants. A rhetorical question, but neither of us knew the answer. I'm going to walk towards the window and see what happens, she whispered again. Everything inside me wanted to shout at her, no, stop, like a bad horror movie, but it just wouldn't come out. Part of me wanted to see what would happen next. He's still staring. He's not blinking. I'm as close to the window as I cared to, then a sharp, shrieking sound overwhelmed her words. I had to pull the phone away from my face. All I could hear on the other end was that sound, an almost static scream, and my mother-in-law. The sound is coming from him. Fuck, why did I do that? His mouth is open wider than his eyes and he won't stop screaming. Dial tone. The phone cut off. Hey, Kathy. Kathy, are you there? What the fuck happened? Shit, something was horribly wrong, and I knew I had to go to her. I ran into my bedroom, grabbed my handgun and an extra magazine. I wanted to be prepared for whatever happened. Then I jumped in my car and headed her way. I tried calling her multiple times on the way, but there was no answer. I also tried my husband, but he didn't answer either. The odometer reached 100 miles an hour as I sped to her rescue. The tires on the gravel kicked up dust as I pulled into her driveway a little too hard. I ran up to her glass front door and knocked, all while keeping my wits about me for any strangers, and she rushed to the door. I'm so glad you're here. After you let out that scream, he ran off into the woods, still screaming the whole time. The way his body was so stiff and rigid as he ran away, it was disturbing. It really sent chills throughout my whole body. Hurry, come in. You need to be in here where it's safe. She ushered me inside and made the best cup of hot tea I've ever had. Mark is still at work, but I called and left a message for him to meet us here when he gets off, I explained. I called him on the way after she hadn't answered. I'm sure he'll be coming soon. My message was kind of frantic. I can't believe all this happened in broad daylight. How soon after the call dropped did he run off? It was pretty much immediately. The call dropped and he ran, just like that. I'm still shaken up, she explained. Do you think we should call the cops? This man is obviously fucking with you. This would be twice now. I had a sense of urgency in my voice. I don't know. Do you think it will do any good? I answered her by dialing the local police department. Hello, yes, there is a stranger lurking around my mother-in-law's cabin. Do you think you could send someone up here to take a look? I asked the friendly officer who answered the phone. Sure, we'll send someone up there shortly, she replied. But who knew how long shortly would be? The officer showed up about an hour or so later. Kathy and I had been sitting, sipping tea in almost silence as both of our brains were consumed with figuring this all out. I opened the door to let the officer in and recounted the events that the stranger had been involved in. Then the lady officer turned to Kathy and asked, What did this man look like? Well, he's tall, about as tall as my son, so I'd say he's 6'2", Hispanic, wearing dark blue coveralls and work boots. He was outside, working on landscaping and maintenance. Seems like the landlord probably know him, but I've never seen him, and I've been living here for almost a month now. He had slick back hair and a scraggly mustache. Has to be in his late 30s. As she described the man, the officer took note and closed his pad when Kathy was done speaking. Okay, we'll look into this and talk to the landlords as well to see if they know who this gentleman is. I'll get back to you if we find out anything. In the meantime, keep your doors and windows locked and stay inside. If you hear or see anything else suspicious, give me a call, the officer said as she passed me her card. I ushered her out and thanked her for coming by. A few hours later, my husband showed up and we filled him in on what happened. He had his own opinion of the situation. I think you need to look for another place to live, Mom. This place obviously has some bad shit attached to it, and I don't want you living somewhere unsafe. But I really love it here. This little cabin is perfect for me, and I'm not ready to leave, she protested. Well, please be safe. I know you can't buy a gun due to your drug runner past felonies. So, babe, I want you to leave that pistol here with her. Please keep it in a safe but easily accessible place, he said, always so loving and protective. I'm gonna get going. Babe, just follow me since we came in separate cars. I nodded in understanding. He left in his car, and mine and hers were still parked in the steep drive. Oh, I need to call Kitten in. Kathy suddenly remembered her beloved feline friend had been out all day. Kitten, Kitten, she called over, but the cat never came. Maybe she's out somewhere reproducing. I'm sure Kitten will be back, I said, trying to keep her calm about the fact that her cat was missing. Yeah, you're probably right, she added. Well, I should be going. If I stay too much longer, your son's gonna worry. I'm just a few minutes away if you need anything, and I'm off for the next couple of days, I said as I hugged her small, plump, dwarven frame and headed to the door. I hope you enjoyed the previous stories. If so, please feel free to subscribe, like, and sign up for notifications for future video content. Have a great time.